Welcome to the Podcast Editors Mastermind, where we help you with the business side of podcast editing. And today we are tackling a subject that is ever present, at least for me, imposter syndrome. That feeling that you're just not quite good enough. Many editors start out as editing our own shows, and we never feel like we have the skills to get the job done when others are like actual audio engineers or whatever. So we're going to tackle how we deal with the imposter syndrome. And of course, we're never alone when we do this. So I'm Daniel Abendroth of Roth Media.
I'm Carrie Caulfield Eric from Yaya Podcasting.
And I'm Brian Ensminger from TopTierAudio.com.
And we have our lovely guest today.
Hi, I'm Heather Wester from Ironed Out Media.
So let's get into it. So imposter syndrome is that feeling that even when you have the skills necessary, you're doing the job, you never quite feel like you deserve whatever accomplishment you're doing or the position you're in. For example, like I do this full time, but I don't have the formal training of any kind of audio work. I'm all self-taught. It's like I feel that the success I've found like just doesn't feel quite deserved. So do you want to talk about like how imposter syndrome has affected us, or how do you want to start this? Yes, Brian, why don't you start us off?
I was going to type in so that we could have the thing in the pretty video for the answer that we're going to give. Yeah, so imposter syndrome definitely affects me. I think probably the most recent and the most pervasive that sits in my mind was when I launched the Hindenburg journalist course about, 6 to 8 weeks ago. So I launched it and I had a goal. I wanted to have a certain number of sales within the first few days. And I actually hit that, which totally blew my mind. But the thing that really kind of continues to plague me is every time I sell one, the next day I'm thinking, so am I going to get a refund request? Because even though I keep getting feedback that the course does exactly what I said it was going to do, and it's giving people exactly what they're looking for, I think, but maybe not this one. Like, did I accidentally oversell my capability or anything like that? So that's definitely one that was a challenge. And as you guys know, having been in the mastermind for several years now, that was something that was on my to-do list for, I think, since the beginning of time. And it was pretty much Carrie making fun of me for like 2 years that finally got me to do it. So it's like
nicely. I made fun of you nicely.
You did. And thank you for that. But I mean, it was that pushed me to do it because I had that whole imposter syndrome thing going on. And then when I launched it, every time the sale comes through, I'm still going, okay, is this one going to be a refund request?
I can relate to that having now selling my RX7 course. I feel the same way. When I announced that you could register for the course, I spent the entire day with my stomach hurting and feeling like I was going to vomit. So I completely understand that. But I also, in terms of just podcast editing, every time I get a new client, I go through this period where that first episode, I'm like, I'm terrible. I don't know what I'm doing. There's this whole like negative thought process, negative things I'm telling myself the whole time. And then delivering the final result to the client is like just so much stress and so much anxiety until they're like, oh yeah, it's great. And then I'm like, I can't believe they like that.
I need that validation.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, but even I don't listen to it. I'm like, no, they're stupid. I mean, that's how bad like it gets sometimes.
It's always a nice feeling whenever on the show the client will kind of praise their editor or like they name me personally. Like it's always really nice. Like get that validation, or like whenever I think I'm messing up or like I'm not doing well, like if it's like so sometimes they'll want like a rush delivery or need changes like really quick. And if I feel like I took too long, then I'm like, oh, I should have done better. I should have done better. Then they come back with, thank you so much for helping me with this. You're the best. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I do that. Like so I like was apologizing to a client once because I thought I was so incredibly late. Turns out it was a week early.
Oh,
but I just assumed, yeah. I just assumed I had done something wrong.
Mm.
So the struggle with imposter syndrome is absolutely real for me, at least. And it doesn't matter. Even though I've been doing this a long time, I've been editing podcasts since 2014. Yeah, I still feel like I have no idea what I'm doing sometimes. Just
I understand that. I started in radio, I think 2006. And a lot of my experience comes from editing things in radio, a controlled environment. I feel like I'm pretty good at that. But when it comes to editing podcasts, I feel like there's so much more involved. And yeah, 15 years experience in radio, but a year and a half in podcasts, I just don't feel like it's enough.
So you mentioned that you feel like podcasts are more involved. I don't come from radio, so I don't have a real frame of reference. Can you share with us maybe what that means in terms of how they're more involved?
With podcasters being more involved?
Yeah.
Well, in radio, you're basically just cleaning up stumbles, false starts, your typical crutch word, deep breaths. Then you'll just do some dynamic processing, some compression. In radio, they are in more of a controlled environment. You have your studio and there's foam all over the walls. And then you have like top of the line microphones. But with a podcaster, they're going to be in a different room, bedrooms, closets, bathrooms, kitchens. And so they're going to be on different microphones also, from your typical condenser mic to the microphone on earbuds. It's just a broad range. And so there's going to be a lot more involved in the editing process as far as using plugins and, different tricks and whatnot.
Okay.
I hope that answers your question there.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah. There's a lot more problem solving and a lot more variables that go into
Right.
podcasting.
Yes. Variable. That's the word.
Yeah. Variety.
Right.
Or
Variety.
dumpster fires.
Or like when a client records their, I probably shouldn't call anybody out.
No, you shouldn't.
No, but when they're like 6 feet away from their microphone, there's only so much you can do to make them sound good.
Or right on top of it.
Right. And unfortunately, it's not, and it's our job to help them know, of course, and we do the best we can for them. But you don't get that in a controlled environment, very obviously. So
right. That's right.
The categories.
Tonight might be a great example of that, right? So for those of you that have guests on, sometimes it's your job to help them troubleshoot their audio. When we got on tonight, there was something not right with my audio. So while we were on here, while we were backstage, the three other people sitting on here on the screen are helping me troubleshoot that stuff. Like, that's some of the variables. I've actually got a nice mic, and I think I know what I'm doing, but apparently tonight I didn't have it right.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Stuff happens. And especially now that everybody's streaming from home, I feel like there's a lot more technical problems simply because everybody's using Zoom or everybody's using StreamYard or everybody's doing Facebook Live. So of course it gets a little bit more glitchier. So that's all I have to say about that.
All right. Before we dive too much into imposter syndrome, one thing we do on this show is we give other podcast editors the opportunity to edit this show for portfolio so they get feedback for whatever reason. And Heather was gracious enough to offer her services for last week's episode with Brittany Felix. Be sure to go to podcasteditorsmastermind.com if you want to listen to that episode. As always with Brittany, it's packed full of amazing information. But Heather, you edited that episode. So let's talk a little bit about what your process was when you edited us. And don't be gentle.
Okay. Well, receiving the tracks, I love how everyone recorded their individual tracks. So the first thing I did is I wanted to line up with the start of the show, the countdown, so that everyone was talking at the same time. And then I just listened through as I edited. I just wanted to cut out some of those stumble words and just sort of, when someone is speaking over the other, just if you're laughing or you tell a joke or there's some background stuff, just listen in for what lines up where. And I was using Hindenburg for that one. That's my favorite for editing things like that because I can lock it in time. I don't know too much about Adobe in that manner. And then, breaths, stumbles when someone bumps into the microphone or bumps the desk. I try to get that out. Just general cleanup. The thing one of the plugins I did use for Hindenburg was some of the noise suppression.
Okay.
There was kind of a hum, but I think that's mostly it.
Oh, who had the hum?
Probably me.
Do you remember? It's okay if you don't remember.
Yeah.
No,
We're all gonna think it's us.
No, I would have to look back at the name. I'm sorry.
No, that's quite all right. Quite all right.
So one thing we don't expect, so we don't really give a whole lot of stipulation as to like what you edit out. So you just did like the bare kind of like the ums and the ahs, but you left the content intact mostly?
Well, no, there were some things that didn't quite vibe well with the podcast itself versus the live video. Some things that a listener might hear would not make sense to someone who was actually viewing the video. You know, what are they laughing at? What's so funny? That sort of stuff. Some of the laughter, like
accidentally remove somebody from the stream,
right? But there's some laughter, nervous pauses or short pauses, that sort of thing, stumbling over words. But most of the content is still there.
Okay.
And how well did our claps line up? Like once you did that, did everything sync as far as the? That's what I thought. I see the laugh.
It was. I thought I had one of the tracks lined up just right, and I noticed she's not here tonight.
Jennifer.
Yes, Jennifer. Yeah. There was at one point where she was talking about something Brian had mentioned about Fiverr. And I was like, this was like 10 minutes later. I was like, whoa, that did not line up at all. So I had to restart the editing process, and kind of when she said Fiverr, I had to slide the track back to when you were talking about Fiverr. And at that point, everything lined up just fine.
Interesting.
Wow.
I figured it'd be Brittany whoever would cut her out of the stream.
No, actually, because she recorded her own audio.
Locally.
I'm going to be honest with you. Whenever I was told that she was cut, I was a little nervous. How am I going to line this up? And just thinking in my head, am I going to have to do some fade in, some fade out to kind of, piece it in? Will I have to cut what they're talking about and place it somewhere else? Sort of Frankenstein editing, as I like to call it myself. But no, hers, it was all pretty good. It was just that one little bit with
just a little track. Tiny blip.
That was This was honestly the best episode I have ever edited. I had so much fun with it. I'm going to be honest with you. It was like the best. It was the best.
I think you should say that.
No.
Yeah, it makes us feel better because we feel like, speaking of imposter syndrome, we feel like we totally don't have our act together. I mean,
I'm going to say it has more to do with the content than with the quality of our audio. Because when you're editing something, because, Heather, you're a podcast editor, so editing something geared towards you specifically is a lot more enjoyable to edit, as opposed to if you're listening to somebody recap today's stock market. You don't do that kind of thing. Could be.
It's a lot harder to edit something that you're enjoying, in my opinion. I'm going to be honest with you, because you just get so drawn and you're like, oh, wait, was that a bump? Was that a pop? Let me go back.
You become a listener.
Yes, that's it. That's it.
Okay, that's an awkward silence.
Yep.
Where do we go from here?
Edit that out.
Yeah.
Transitions were never my strong point.
So how do you cope with the feelings of imposter syndrome, and how do you go about skill building? Because one of the things that I struggle with, and I think it's common among the podcast editors that don't have the formal background, that don't come from audio engineering, is the lack of skills. Everything I know is self-taught from YouTube or from blog posts or whatever.
Tom Kelly, Chris Curran.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's another topic, is comparison. But
yeah.
What have you all done as far as like skill building, or like how much do you think you should invest in that?
Well, for me from the beginning, my training wasn't formal. I didn't go to school for this. Me getting into radio started as a dare. It was.
I think there's a story
I think we're
there.
going to need to back up and talk about
we
this.
can come back to this one.
Well, I am I'm third oldest of 9 children. Okay. Money was tight. We didn't have cable. We had like 3 DVDs we would watch all the time. Mortal Kombat being one of them. And we would watch it to the point that the DVD didn't work anymore. So at that point, DVDs aren't working. We're just listening to the radio every night, all the time. And my brother, he said to me that he could not believe the guy talking on the radio was getting paid just to talk. And I was like, yeah, agreeing with him. And he's like, Heather, I bet you won't call that man and tell him on his job. And I was like, yeah, I will. So I called him. I told him, I was like, I want your job. He's like, you mean you want a job like mine? I'm like, no, I want your job. So he's like, hold on. He put me on hold because he had, at the time, I didn't know what he was doing, but he had to take care of a winner. He had to put the information down for my winner who had just won like a CD or something. He did a break. But the cool thing was I was able to listen to all of that. So that was exciting. I honestly thought he was going to leave me on hold for the rest of the night until I gave up and hung up. But he came back to me. He's like, hey, if you're serious about this, you need to contact our program director and, let him know what you want to do. I was like, all right. So I sent the program director an email, and probably within the next week or so, I started interning. I'm going to say intern because I was never in school. I was just working for free for that experience. And, doing street hits, driving the station van, doing promotions. I just built upon that, always asking, what more can I do? What else can I learn? And luckily, my program director there, he was always willing to help me out during that time. And it went from being an intern, doing street hits, to being the local affiliate producer for a major morning show here in the Southeast, at least. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Rick and Bubba, but I was the affiliate producer for them. And from there, I went to doing I was in the production department, started reading, writing, recording commercials, and so on. But it all started on a dare.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's no formal training in that.
Yeah.
No, but I think interning is completely a valid way to learn skills. Absolutely. And I am a little jealous of young people these days because, they're on my lawn.
Honesty right here.
You should probably cut that out.
No, keep it.
On my lawn. I don't really have a big lawn anyway, so it doesn't matter. No, but they have the opportunity now. There are a lot of companies, a lot of podcasts who would love to have an intern, somebody that they can teach the skills to do the job for free or for like a really low wage. Because it is, there's just so much to learn. And it's not really being taught anywhere.
I agree with you. I wish that all the YouTube videos and all the teachings and courses that are online now were available back in the day. And I say back in the day, even when I was in radio, because, being an employee, a coworker at this particular company, any company in radio broadcasting, it's cutthroat. Okay. And this knowledge is free. Okay. But those certain people aren't willing to share the knowledge because they're afraid you're going to step on their neck and, boast yourself up. And so much of it was withheld. It doesn't matter how much experience or training you have or how long you've been in the company. If you're not the right person or what they're looking for, then you're not going to get any further than your basic part-time board op.
So did you experience that in your time in radio? Okay.
Yes, I did. But because I loved it so much, I stayed, always hoping more would come out of it. And eventually I just got tired of it. And that's when I decided I'm going to do this on my own. And thus Ironed Out Media was born.
Which I think is another really great thing about podcasting, because especially podcast editors, because they are very free with their information. So one of the places I have learned a lot is from the Podcast Editors Club and also now Just Busters. I learn a lot from our female editor community, which you are a part of, Heather.
Yes, I am.
Yes. So shout out to Just Busters. Just because everybody really is so free and generous with their information. So that is one definite place you can start in those Facebook groups to really ask questions, no matter how stupid you may think they are.
Yes.
Somebody's going to answer them and or give you a resource, or maybe you'll find out that they want to know the answer to the question as well, right? Because sometimes somebody posts one question and then a whole bunch of people chime in like, oh yeah, I've been wondering about this too.
Yeah, it's almost foreign to me how kind and generous everyone is in their knowledge. It's a person A is going to ask a question, person B will answer it perfectly. Person C will piggyback off of B, and person B is going to learn something they didn't know because of person C contributing to the conversation.
Yeah.
It's that domino effect.
And as toxic as Facebook can be, I think Facebook groups can be super valuable. So one, the fact that there are like generic podcast groups, but how niche they can get. Because Brian runs one for people that use Hindenburg. I have a group for people that use Reaper. Carrie has a group for female editors. So if you have a specific question, there's probably a community just for that topic.
Right. And I'm using Adobe Audition 1.5. So it's like right after Cool Edit Pro became Adobe Audition.
Yeah. It's too bad Jennifer's not here because she knows all about Cool Edit Pro.
So I was editing my first 2-person episode. Actually, no, it wasn't my first. I was just tired of trying to line everything up, to be honest with you. In Adobe Audition, I don't know if it has the capability to lock your tracks in place. And I went into the Podcast Editors Club looking for some help, and I was referred to Hindenburg. And I think, was it Brian? Did you do something with Steve?
I did a walkthrough probably 2 years ago.
I feel like I watched that video.
Didn't you do that more recently? Or did he just replay it? I swear.
I did something with Chris Curran where we just went through
Chris. I called him Steve. Okay. Yeah, Chris. I'm sorry.
Okay,
yeah, that's the so sorry. No, that's him. That's him. That's the one. And when I learned that you could just lock it in place, and then if you wanted to cut a breath out from or something from both tracks, you could do it and it would line right back up. Sorry, my accent's coming out. It would line right back up.
No worries.
That has saved my bacon so many times.
I'm from the South, so you go, girl.
All right, sister.
So speaking of Hindenburg, if you do want to learn more about Hindenburg, Brian has a course, really great course. Be sure to check that out. And also, at the time of this recording, this coming Sunday, if tech issues have been an issue in the past, Steve is going to be Steve Stewart of the Podcast Editors Club and Podcast Editor Academy is going to be doing a demonstration with Jenny Rins Stotrup. Am I saying that right? I always mess up her last name.
Stotrup. Yeah.
Okay. So that'd be August 10th, 2020. So if you're listening to the audio version of this, you can probably watch the replay. Or if you're part of the academy, so 7 days. So from the 10th to the 17th. And then if you're part of the academy, it'll be available there. So Heather, I kind of got ahead of things. So we're here to help you. So what struggles do you have? What can we help you with?
Okay. So going back and touching again on the topic of imposter syndrome, I wonder where I could be or what I could have done had I not allowed myself to hold me back. And another thing is being introverted. Okay. I wonder how my extrovert and ambivert counterparts are able to hook clients, so to speak, because I feel like you need to be a little bit more social than what I feel myself to be when it comes to getting clients.
I totally get that.
I think that's a misconception. Which fellow introvert right here, there are
Although I'm probably an ambivert. I mean, because I have my moments.
I am 100% an introvert. I remember getting like such anxiety whenever I would like get on a call with a client, and I'd be so grateful whenever they would cancel it because then I wouldn't have to go through with it. Like for an introvert, there's nothing better than canceled plans.
That's yes, totally.
It saves you from having to cancel, right?
That's the truth.
But I think with anything, it's a skill. So we can go into like specifics. So like one thing I do with my clients in order to foster a better relationship is I do quarterly calls. So 4 times a year, we'll hop on a call, a video chat. We talk about any questions they have, ways to improve the show. And the big thing is just so that I'm not that ghost on the other side of the email. I found myself just being, not wanting that kind of face-to-face contact and just relying on a few emails here and there and just doing my job and just being done with it. But I wanted to be a little more involved and just kind of build more of a relationship with the clients. That's why I started doing these video chats. And I think it's just like a learned skill. The more you do it, the easier it is.
Okay.
So what about when you first started, Daniel, when you first started to get clients, how much did you put yourself out there so they could find you?
I don't know that I even do that now, honestly.
Right.
Yeah,
because
myself out there.
That's okay. So this is something that I have done. And I think, obviously I'm still in business. So, somewhat successfully. 5 years ago, I would never have done this. Like you would have never have seen me on camera at all. You would, I wouldn't even let people take pictures of me. Like I did not want any kind of public recognition.
Face for radio.
Exactly. Right. And I'm certainly, not a beauty queen.
No voice for silent film.
Yeah.
That takes the cake. I like that.
Yeah. It's great. So I realized that if I wanted to be successful, because this podcast editing business is not my first business. I've got like one failed side hustle and one failed attempt at making a business. But I didn't like charge anybody for anything. So you can't like actually call that. Anyway, that aside, being like stepping out in kind of the public eye was terrifying. And that's why I got into podcasting. One of the reasons is because you only need to hear my voice and I can talk, right? And you don't have to see me. And then, of course, social media is a thing. Like all of a sudden I realized that if I was going to connect with people, they would actually have to see me sometimes.
Yeah. And
it just was a slow progression of like taking a picture of myself and posting a picture of myself. Like those were 2 different processes, right? And then just continually practicing and practicing and practicing until I am here today where I'm like, ooh, I'm going to do like a TikTok video because that's fun. Right. And I developed, I guess, a certain comfort level with it. The great thing is that I can control it, because, we're not face to face. So I can control this interaction with me, a lot. Like I have my background, my new background behind me with my fairy lights. I know anybody listening.
I love that, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. I got it, set it up just to have it a little bit nicer. But again, it's like controlling that environment. So it is that I don't have to do it when I don't feel like doing it. And I never put that pressure on myself. But it really was years of practice to be able to put myself out there. And I'm really glad I did it because now I have a lot of fun and I get to meet a lot of people. And then if I don't want to, I don't. Like I can go hide and watch Netflix, right?
Yes.
But it literally started with that one action, that one picture every once in a while. And that became more and more and more until I got comfortable. And now I can look at a picture of myself and be like, oh, I'm so cute. Right.
Oh, that's good. I'm so happy to hear that.
Yeah. Well, it took a long time to get there. So
I'm proud of you. That was one of the things also that made me not want to do this tonight is just having this visual interaction. And that's really and truly, then everything just followed. What are you going to talk about? No one's going to listen to you. It's going to be so boring.
Yes. So one of the things that has helped me over the years ties into what William put in the chat. He said that Heather needs a partner. She gets nervous around strangers, but comes out of her shell when she's with friends or something like that. I'm struggling a little bit to read because my mind is going a zillion miles an hour, because that speaks to me as well. Because part of the reason I'm comfortable doing this on video and putting this show together and talking to other podcast editors is because I have the three of you here to also kind of put this together. And so there's a little bit of safety in numbers. And also there's the public commitment to the three of you to show up and be willing to do this. So I sort of have to. So I sort of forced myself into it. That's all I got.
Yeah, finding a buddy and then challenging each other to do things. I know that like my first public speaking gig where I had to like stand up in front of strangers and talk was the hardest thing I'd ever done. But after that, I was like, okay, now I know I can do this. And I'm terrified to do a lot of things.
So sorry.
Yeah. Oh no, and I just do them. Like I've gotten to the point where it's like, okay, I'm going to be terrified for like 5 seconds, and then I'm not going to think about it anymore, and I'm going to go on autopilot and do it. And then I cringe afterwards, of course, because it's so embarrassing.
So I have two pieces of advice to kind of wrap this up, unless we have more to talk about. As far as getting a partner, brilliant idea. Because like I said before, like I struggle with the anxiety of hopping on a call. So what I started doing is my wife is much more personable. So she is on every call I do. So whenever we do a news, like a discovery call with a potential client or the quarterly calls, she's on the call to kind of facilitate the conversation. Because whenever I get excited about a subject, I'll start talking really fast and I jump over my word,
Yes.
So
that's me.
So she can be there to kind of like keep me on pace. And I have a standing desk, so like we'll stand next to each other, and she'll tap me if she wants to speak next. So like if the client is talking, she'll tap me, and that tells me like don't say anything. My wife is going to take over. So I don't know if that's a possibility for you or for others, but having a partner in the business to kind of assist with this. And the other thing is really awkward and uncomfortable is actually role playing.
Yeah.
I used to work in sales, and every week we'd have like a weekly meeting, and then we'd break out and we would role play, and salesmen would pair up and they would go back and forth. One person would pretend to be the customer while one would be the salesman. And then you just kind of practice that. And it's the hardest thing and the most uncomfortable thing you can possibly do. But going through the different situations, because one thing when I was on calls with clients is they'd ask me a question that I wasn't prepared for. And then I would freeze, or I would agree to something I didn't want to agree to, or I give out too much information free. Yes. But
we could have a whole conversation about that. Like that is
future episode. Don't give away too much.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and maybe that's something we can facilitate within the podcast mastermind group.
Do role play.
Do role plays. And it is really uncomfortable, but if you have to trust the person you're with, and it's going to be private, friend or somebody who understands the business to just kind of like work that out with you.
I could see where it would be beneficial. Thinking of role playing just gives me stress. Tell me all over again. I'm just gonna be honest. But I can see where it would be a useful tool.
And if you can work through that anxiety in a safe space, then whenever you are in the real thing, it's so much easier.
Okay. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah, even if we could arrange something like just private Zoom meetings for people where really, because I think if you have a good partner to make you feel comfortable, then you can really start to get into that role play thing. Because I actually offered this to a girlfriend who was having a problem closing sales, and I was like, well, let's jump on a call and see what you're telling people and how you like end the conversation. So yeah, I think that would be fun. I will play the client.
Or even do both ways.
Right.
Because sometimes, because one
I
thing.
don't want any clients. So I'm done.
Sure. But sometimes it's beneficial for, if you're trying to learn, to be the client and see how somebody else does it to get an idea. And then you can kind of copy that.
So I told you guys earlier, I'm kind of a processor when it comes to asking questions. This is
I'm the same way.
This is touching back to the editing for podcasts, episodes. Do you think it's important to have those plugins and all those different filters and whatnot? Or is it just mostly important getting the long silences out, the plosives, the trouble words, crutch words out? What do you think is most important?
I think you'll get a different answer based on what people use. If somebody has all the plugins and they know how to use them, they'll say you absolutely need to. But I think it all depends. So we had Chris Curran a couple weeks ago, and he's been in audio engineering for over a decade. So he knows what he's doing. But the difference is he also can cater to a different clientele where he can charge hundreds of dollars per episode. Not every client is going to need that. So like the clients I work with, they are not trained professionals. Like they don't need to have like pristine audio. They do need a certain quality, degree of quality that I also strive for. Processor equals ADD.
Oh no, when you need to like process things, not like a computer processor.
I'm a little ADD also.
I don't think that it's absolutely, you don't need anything fancy. As long as the end, I think so. There's always a conversation between like being the best you can and being good enough. And I think like the answer lies somewhere in there. Like, plosives, obvious distractions, absolutely. But do you need to like fine tune the EQ and like really like nail down like every aspect of it? For me, I don't think so. I don't do that, and I've
talking. I didn't mean to cut you off, but that's just something that bothers me a lot with equalizers, equalizing. I don't know much about it, and I just hear so many other editors talk about it. I did this, I did that. This is better than doing it yourself. Is better than Alphonic, and I'm just worried. Am I doing something wrong? Am I not doing something I should be doing? Should I stop trying to find clients and just learn more? Focus more on equalizing. Focus more on learning how to use the plugins. And often because of the imposter syndrome, I just want to stop operations and just take every course that's out there. Hindenburg, all of I can't even name all of them. I mean, there's so many and so much on YouTube. Should I stop and just even go to school for it? That's how strong this syndrome can be, I think.
If you're listening, you won't see this, but me, Carrie, and Brian are all shaking our head no. Yes. Do not stop what you're doing. If people are paying for what you're doing now, let them keep paying.
And ultimately, your job is just to make it sound good and and whatever that looks like for you is perfectly okay. I work with a lot of editors who don't use any plugins at all. So we're just learning the native effects in Adobe Audition. And you know what? It works just fine.
Okay. So whenever you edit something, do you have someone out of the business listen to something? To see if they can tell a difference.
Yeah. No, actually, I do this with my husband all the time, but he can't hear the entire frequency range. So a lot of times you just can't tell the difference. So, but yes, because, I don't always trust my own ear. And I think that, especially if I've been like listening to the same thing like 500 times. I mean,
that's something I struggle with. It's just trying to, I'm editing and I feel like this sounds better. Can you listen to this? And they're like, well, this doesn't sound any different than the original. And I'm like, what? No, you can see it in the waves. It's different.
Right.
So it's just like, am I doing something wrong or is it just their ear? Like, what's going on?
You have a much more critical ear.
Yeah.
It's like having a chef taste your food versus just a regular old eater.
Me.
Yeah. It doesn't sound right. But
Yeah, I think that what I would say is that if people are paying for what you're doing, the way that I've seen the most growth in my life is when I face a challenge and the results are pretty public, right? So I could sign up for all the courses in the world, but I won't actually get better until I do the work in a way that failure is obvious. And so my encouragement would be to keep doing what you're doing. And then as you identify gaps you want to fill, go look at those.
Well, you just mentioned something about if you're getting paid and it's being put out there, keep doing what you're doing. But I don't have that client. I don't have clients yet. I'm still editing for free to put it in my portfolio, and I'm not getting the feedback. I've stopped. I've stopped because I'm not getting the feedback that I requested. I usually free editing
because podcasters are busy. I mean, let me put it this way. If there was something wrong with it, you would get that feedback.
Okay.
They would definitely tell you if there was a problem, if they weren't happy with the work. You would definitely get the feedback because people are more apt to share something negative than positive. If they're happy with it, you've just made their life easier. They've moved on to the next thing. So
no news is good news.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So like if you don't get feedback, that's a positive thing. And I will say, if you have somebody listen to it, like I do that with my wife. Like I'll spend 20 minutes on like this 2-second thing trying to I hear it. Yes. And then I have her listen to it and she's like, it's like going to the eye doctor, A or B. It's the same thing. So I take that as validation that I'm putting my energy into something that's not going to pay off. Is the average listener going to notice it? If not, like I'm not going to spend my time on it. If you're editing if you're editing Chris Curran's show about podcast or audio engineering, then you're going to need to like put in that effort because his listeners are going to tell.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But for the average podcaster, people aren't going to hear that. And I think we had a question in the chat.
We did. We'll go to that in just a second. One thing I wanted to just kind of jump in on is you edited our show. This is 4 tracks, all recorded in different locations on different microphones.
That was the first time I'd ever edited that many tracks at once, by the way.
No, but you did it. Like, when I did it, it was the first time I had done 4 tracks as well, because I usually tap out at 3. So I wanted to throw that out there. John had a question for us in the chat. He said the only things he ever does to his episodes are normalize and noise reduction. His question is, should he be doing more?
I think the only thing, if that's working, perfect, keep going. The only thing, I think the next thing that I would suggest, and I think going back to like Brian's point, is always keep learning. So like if you hear people talking about something, just like start watching YouTube videos on how to do that, and just like build your arsenal bit by bit. So don't worry about trying to become a great audio engineer right now. Just learn one new thing next.
So what do you do if you don't have episodes to edit? Should I just record my own episodes? Should I just talk and just clean that up?
Yeah. Or a great time to start a podcast.
Yeah.
Right.
Heather's journey to becoming
exactly
a podcast editor.
All right.
You might not get the downloads, but that's not the point of it.
Right. Right.
And I think that speaks to the role playing, because William also commented that when you were on the radio, you would role play. You could also think of this as being a version of role playing. You're in the practice room, but again, you got to hit publish, and you're not hitting publish to find out if people like your content. You're hitting publish to force yourself to do the best you can right now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I never thought about that putting those two together, role playing when editing audio. That's the same. I like that.
That's what's good about these masterminds. Is like you get these epiphanies.
Yeah.
So back to John's question, normalize and noise reduction. I think those are great places to start. I would suggest the next thing would probably be compression.
No, I would start with EQ.
No?
Compression,
EQ, really?
It takes,
EQ, there it is.
Right. Okay. So I say this because compression is such a big. I mean, you could spend years. I mean, you could write a thesis on compression and still have people disagree with you. It's such a big topic that I would start a little bit smaller, and EQ is a great place to do that, especially because you can solve a lot of problems with EQ that you can't solve with compression necessarily. So EQ becomes extremely useful. Whereas compression, you really can get away with not having it. And you can certainly run something through a phonic and be fine. Like, there's a way around compression, but I think like EQ is a valuable tool.
And also
I'm wondering something.
I'm for Heather, you have a bit of a secret weapon with Hindenburg because it has that generic voice profiler.
Yes.
And if nothing else, that's a really good tool. Even if you don't like what it does to the voices, like if you don't like the EQ curves that they've chosen, it helps you understand what it's seeing. And then it helps you hear the gap and identify, because my experience has been that the hardest part of EQ isn't figuring out that you can raise and lower frequencies. It's nailing the ones you want to hit to make it sound the way you want it to sound.
So Brian, when is your EQ course coming out?
Oh, I don't have an EQ course, man. That's a master class. Same as the compression.
I know.
I was going to ask Santa for it.
Well, I think that's going to be probably my next course coming up is EQ. So Brian, if you want to do it together, we can do it together.
This is when I call Carrie and ask her if I did it right.
Right. No. And,
So William is he's a friend.
Okay. No, love that.
But I'm spilling on my secrets.
Yeah, or I could just have my son talk about Star Wars and send it over to you.
So the comment is, get Dusty to talk about Mass Effect or Destiny. You'll have hours to edit, and that could be a thing. Just get we always like joke about two drunk guys with a blue Yeti, kind of shooting the breeze. But hey, that could be a way to get started editing. Maybe get something a little bit better quality, because that'd be really awful.
Maybe I need something really bad to make it sound really good, right?
Well, really, all we do is problem solve. I mean, because we get such crazy, such crazy situations in podcasting.
So Ishmael has a really funny comment that actually has a good point. Me at the beginning, I don't have imposter syndrome. Me right now, I need to sell my kidney and pay Chris Curran.
Yes.
Yeah, the arrogance when you don't know what you're doing versus the once you know a little bit, realizing how much you don't know.
Mm-hmm. And that was me when I came into podcast editing. Oh, I know how to do radio edits. I'm good. I get into podcast editing. I'm like, whoa, I don't know what I'm doing. It's just different. It's so different. Back to the variables.
None of us knew what we were doing. And some of us still don't know what we're doing. We're just all figuring it out together. And that's why I think that we're all so willing to share is because this is unlike anything else. I mean, music people don't have to get something recorded in somebody's garage with the, neighbors mowing the lawn and the cats meowing and the dogs barking and the birds tweet. Like that just doesn't happen. So, we're just we're all making it work together.
Mm-hmm. And I guess I would also say that, if you're thinking about imposter syndrome, courses are great for skills building, but that doesn't mean that you won't still face imposter syndrome. Because I did pay Chris Curran and I did go through his course and I think I did a pretty good job, but sometimes I send off an edit and I'm going, I wonder if this is the one where they're going to realize I'm a fraud. Right. And this is 3 or 4 years into getting paid to do this stuff. So, I mean, it still happens. You just got to face it down.
Yeah.
So we got about 5 or 10 minutes left. Heather, do you have any other questions that we can help out?
I'd like to fill the time, but I can't think of anything right now.
Yeah.
Hey, if we don't hit it, we don't hit it. I mean,
yeah. I mean,
no obligation.
I could keep talking about it.
I know. I feel like there's so many things that we could discuss.
Like I could just tell you, just piggyback on what Brian said, is that I still every day, every week, I feel like somebody's going to find out that I'm no good at this. Right? Because even being the community leader in Just Busters, our female podcast editors, woot woot, there's so many amazing women who do way more amazing stuff than I do. Like, and they have credentials and skills and, you know, all these things. And they're, you know, I'm like, why are you listening to me? You know? So it's, you know, it just, I think imposter syndrome really does mean that you care very deeply about doing a good job.
Yeah.
So
That's a nice way to put that.
I mean,
Yeah,
I would
it's
share
just-
that one of the things I actually edit for a guy who is an audio engineer. I do a show that he's not able to edit for time's sake. And I get good feedback from him that I'm doing a good job, which is really encouraging. That doesn't mean that all of my other clients, I still don't think this is going to be the one where they figure out I'm a fraud, right? But I think that speaks to one of the questions you had before. What could I have done if I didn't hold myself back? And I think of it in the reverse. If I had decided I wasn't good enough to go forward, what wouldn't I have accomplished already? And then what could be more? And I'm wondering, like, do you have any perspective for you, Heather, on what you think you might have been able to accomplish if you hadn't let this hold you back?
Well, I had a podcast actually, and I got pod fade because of imposter syndrome.
Okay.
Who's going to listen? Is my editing up to par? And I only did, I did 3 episodes. And one of the episodes I did an interview on Zoom. And it just, I attacked myself, so to say. And I probably could still have the podcast had I not listened to myself and just continued to record and do interviews and edit and put it out on time. So I feel like I could have a pretty good podcast right now. And that was just me holding myself back.
So in a year from now, what do you think you can accomplish? If you start a podcast next week.
I'm working on a podcast right now.
Okay.
for Ironed Out Media. Okay. And it's basically a podcast about podcasting. Well, no, yeah, it's a podcast about podcasting, you know, how to start the podcast. And I feel like I have some different topics within that that aren't normally touched on. And I have listened to quite a few podcasts about podcasting, and I don't want to spill the beans about what it is right now because I'm really excited about it. But I really hate editing myself. I'm going to be honest with you, but I feel like this is some good content. It's only going to be, it's just going to be a handful of episodes, 5 or 6, just a little mini series. But every day I'm attacking myself. Nobody's going to listen. This is not new information. Why are you doing this? Don't waste your time. But in a year from now, I'm hoping to have that out. I'm hoping to have 3 or 4 clients, you know, for the month and just grow on that. I'm not trying to be big. I'm not trying to explode. I am just trying to be creative with my passion. I'm very passionate about this. I mean, like I said earlier, I was in radio even after so many years, not even getting ahead from where I was as a part-time board op. If that answers your question.
It's just a question to answer for yourself.
Yeah.
Just kind of like, I mean, it's kind of hokey, but like the manifesting and just kind of seeing yourself. Like one thing that's really encouraging for me is, where do I want to be? Like, I want to be self-employed, run my own business, set my own hours. So, you know, you kind of make that happen. It's just like, one thing I kind of envision is like being, you know, a big or a known name in podcasting. So just kind of like manifesting that, just kind of imagining it, getting excited about that possibility, because then that's more exciting to do some other endeavor, like trying to come up with a course.
Something that you said, because you've referenced it probably 2 or 3 times, has really kind of stuck out to me. And it's the idea of fighting with yourself. And I'm not getting the words exactly right, but it was a really poignant way that you put it, where you're basically cutting yourself down.
That's it. That's part of the imposter syndrome. I'm attacking myself.
That was it. Attacking yourself. One of the things that I've tried to do is, I think if I heard somebody talking to my son or my daughter the way I'm talking to myself right now, what would I do to that person? And it would probably be something that I would have to have a conversation about later, possibly with people in police uniforms. But I do it to myself, right? All the time. And that to me has been a real challenge to stop doing that because that's the reality, right? Nobody
Wow.
is meaner to me than I am myself.
Yes.
Like nobody else is as good at knowing what I'm afraid of as I am.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's just one of the things that I'm working on. And I thought because of the language that you used, it might be valuable for you.
It is. I did everything I could to choke back this frog in my throat and not let the tears fall down. I'm like, oh, you're so right.
Yeah. And
I mean, I've got 2 little boys myself, and if I heard anyone talking to them like that, mama bear's coming out. You better watch out.
Right. And the other thing that has helped me is like my son is going to pick up, he's going to kind of treat himself the way he sees his parents, treat ourselves and each other. So I always like, I'll say it because I'm a talker, and I'll say something out loud that's negative to myself. And so I will make sure, because he will pick up on it, that I can follow it with something positive. And it's just having that awareness when you have those thoughts and training yourself and practice, because this is all a practice, like dealing with imposter syndrome. It is a practice, something you have to work at every day, I think. And that's the only way I've been able to get over it, is to just, when I say something negative to myself in my head, and to stop and give myself the grace and space, if you will, to be like, wait a second. All right, but you're good at this. Or, what if people won't listen to me, or nobody is going to listen to me? Well, does it matter? Like, you have a voice and you should use it, essentially. So just kind of like reframing things and putting that, following something negative up with something positive. And Lord knows I've edited enough self-help podcasts to know that has something to do with rewiring your neurons.
Yes. I had a lot of... So yeah. So I mean, it's also a change in language you use. So instead of saying like, I'm awful at editing, maybe, I'm not the best editor, and that's okay. And just kind of like tempering your phrases and slowly just kind of becoming more positive, because you can't just like flip a switch and get rid of your imposter syndrome and start being nicer to yourself. It's like Carrie said, it's a practice.
And then you'll start to get, as you start to get clients and make sales and get that feedback where somebody's like, thank you so much, you have made my life easier. Then it becomes a little bit easier to start to believe more positive things about yourself.
Okay.
So it's a process. It really is. Like, again, I 6 years ago would not have done anything like this. Right. And now I'm like, oh, come on, I'm going to make a TikTok video. Ooh, Reels is on Instagram, right?
Yeah.
That's a new,
Yes.
I'm like, let's try this out. Let's push these buttons. So that's because also it's not fun when you're negative, and, it's gotta be fun, right?
Yes.
It's gotta be
I
fun.
would also say find other people and create a mastermind. I think the biggest thing that has helped me deal with imposter syndrome is having 3 other people that I can talk about how they mess up and realize that that's okay. Mistakes happen. You can move on from it, and getting that encouragement to try things or to learn. Or like there'll be times like I have a problem with audio. I'm like, hey, can you guys listen to this? Tell me what you think, and then get feedback to help me be better. And then also kind of hold you accountable. So if you want to start a podcast, getting people that will be like, okay, well, what's the next step? And just kind of like helping you stay on track. And then also helping you be nicer to yourself, and giving you the feedback that you need. So maybe like, do you need feedback on editing? Maybe, a small group of people can give you that feedback.
Okay. That's a good idea. Thank you.
Yeah. And actually, maybe in Just Busters, we can do a little sign up sheet to like, if you want to do a mastermind.
That's a good idea too.
Yeah.
I like that one better.
Yeah. Well, that way you can like pair up with other women who, to learn from, and just to have that connection, because everybody's really amazing. I think.
Yes.
So,
So anybody listening or watching, if you're not part of the Podcast Editors Mastermind group, join, and just like make a post, see who's interested. this mastermind started out of Podcast Editors Club. I just mentioned that I would want to start a mastermind, and Carrie, Jennifer, and Brian all said, "Hey, I do too," and that's how this started. So just like throw it out there because people want to do this, but you just don't know how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't know how to do it. Just start meeting weekly and to kind of see where it goes.
Yeah, and it literally like, we don't do a like really formal structure. It's whatever anybody needs to talk about. And even if it's sometimes we're just hanging out for an hour and then just we're shopping, we're talking about different news.
Yeah, this has been really, really comfortable. Okay, with the lack of, this is going to sound bad, but the lack of structure. It does feel like you're just hanging out, talking with friends. So thank you.
You're welcome. Yay.
Really
Yay. But that's
far off from what we normally do either.
It's not.
We just don't talk about the private stuff publicly.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there's an agreement. I mean, there's nothing like, there's just like a known agreement. Anything mentioned in the mastermind, we don't talk about.
We don't tell anybody outside the group where the bodies are buried.
Exactly. Or what you have planned.
Never.
Yeah. But it's just like, I think because probably we're processors too. So sometimes we just need to just like shoot the breeze and stream of consciousness. And then all of a sudden a problem will come out.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then we'll talk about it and kind of help each other, like help whomever hash through it. But yeah, totally chill and just doing what works kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We got anything else?
I don't have anything else.
Yay, problem solved. Okay, no more imposter syndrome. You're cured.
So Heather, thanks so much for coming on the show. Thanks for this. I want to say amazing topic, but it's something that I think a lot of people deal with, and it's something that's really hard to deal with. So being able to have a public space that we can all kind of commiserate and problem solve, I think has been a lot. It's been really useful and very valuable. I think on the next episode we have Gordon Firemark lined up.
That's the plan.
Yeah. So
right on.
Yeah. So if you have any legal questions, be sure to post that in the group and we can bring it up on the next episode. If you want to be on the show, Carrie, how do people do that?
So you would go to podcasteditorsmastermind.com. In the menu bar, you would click on Be a Guest. Fill out the little form. Tell us if you want to edit an episode or not, because we would appreciate that if you did. But don't worry about it if you don't want to. And hit the submit button, and ta-da, we will contact you and get you hooked up.
Mm-hmm. And please have a topic. It makes it easier to figure out what we want to talk about. And if you don't, I mean, that's fine too.
I didn't have a topic, but these fine people helped out.
Exactly.
I want to be on the show. I don't know what to talk about. Let me on.
Just like, come on, hang out.
Yeah.
But it helps to have a topic.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. And if there's anything you struggle with, we're happy to sit and talk about it. From one thing I think would be cool to do is just kind of workshop somebody's website. Like,
ooh.
Yeah.
I like that idea.
Right? We don't need to start that now because
No, listen, Heather, I saw your website and I was like, oh, this is kind of cool.
When did you look at it?
I looked at it today and then I was like, it looks different than I remember.
Yes.
But it actually looks, there's some things on it. And I was like, I think I need to steal that.
I'm glad. Yay. I've been working on it so hard the past week and a half, 2 weeks, maybe. I'm just really trying to do an overhaul. The next thing is going to be my logo. I'm not 100% happy with it, but I'm really trying to work on my branding right now. I understand that's important from listening to Brittany Felix's last episode. I'm just trying to figure it out, what colors work best. It's not that I'm trying to attract a certain client or push away a certain client, just what looks nice and inviting, trying to work on that layout for the website, look at the font and this, that, and the other. So I've really been working on it. So your feedback means a lot. Thank you.
No, you're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah.
And Heather, if people want to see the hard work you've put into your website, where can they go?
ironedoutmedia.com.
Awesome.
Nice
Thank you. Thank you. I'm Daniel Abendroth. You can find me at rothmedia.audio.
I'm Carrie Caulfield. Eric, you can find me at yayapodcasting.com.
And I'm Brian Ensminger. You can find me at toptieraudio.com.
And thank you so much for watching and listening.
Bye, guys. Thank you, Heather.
Thank y'all for having me.